right, good afternoon, everyone. I hope you enjoyed the performances so far, all the things you've seen. Thank you for sticking around and spending some time. This is the Pillow Talk as a part of the Hip Hop Across the Pillow. I'm going to do brief introductions of our panelists and then go into questions. We will have time for Q&A, so if you know you want to ask something, kind of take a minute to start thinking about how you want to phrase it, and when I open that up, you'll be ready. So I'm going in the order I wrote down here. So starting in the middle, actually, we have Michelle Bird McPhee, aka Lady Bird. Michelle is the founder and executive director of Ladies of Hip Hop, a nonprofit organization empowering girls and women through hip hop culture and the arts, and artistic director of its dance collective. Michelle has earned her BS from Temple University and an MS in nonprofit arts management from Drexel University. She's worked many years as a production coordinator at Brooklyn Academy of Music and then a senior music coordinator at Late Night with Seth Meyers. She currently teaches marketing for the arts and arts advocacy at Texas Tech University and also serves as a Bessie Award Committee member. And on top of that, also teaches Intro to Hip Hop Dance at NYU Steinhardt School. Most recently, though, in partnership with Snipes USA, Michelle opened New York's only woman-led, woman-owned, and women-focused arts space dedicated to street and club dance forms. So ultimately, she has been working for decades to recontextualize spaces and conversations about hip-hop culture along gender, sex, cultural, socio-historical, and racial lines. So welcome, Michelle. Next to me is Buddha Stretch. Born and raised in Brooklyn, New York with 4 siblings, Stretch was influenced by his dad, Emilio Austin Sr., who danced as a youth and provided Stretch with discipline, inspiration, support, and motivation that guided him throughout his career. Stretch's dance style, known as freestyle hip-hop, draws from all aspects of hip-hop culture, music, and dances, which he helped to popularize during the early days of hip-hop music videos and live shows. He met the members of his first dance crew, Mop Top, at an audition for a video they booked for Diana Ross's single, Working Overtime, eventually forming a crew after clubbing together at the Tunnel, and then later forming Elite Force Crew. So his first choreography job was for Joeski Love, the song Pee Wee Dance, rest in peace, Paul Rubens. And he went on to work on many videos, including Will Smith's Men in Black, Getting Jiggy With It, and Miami videos, for which he was nominated for 2 MTV Awards for Best Choreography. And Michael Jackson's Remember the Time video, his most memorable experience and still one of my favorite music videos of all time. An MC and a writer himself, he recorded an underground hit called It Don't Matter by 10 Thieves and continues to make music today. He DJ'd the battle last night if you came to that, so welcome Buddha Stretch. And then finally, last but certainly not least, Anna Rockefeller Garcia, who you just saw on stage. So also known as La Rocca, she is a New York City-based dancer, teacher, and advocate for women in hip hop, named by Latina Magazine as, quote, one of the most iconic B-girls in hip hop history, unquote. Rockefeller teaches workshops which celebrate the roots, history, and technique of hip hop, alongside hosting breaking sessions throughout New York City since 1997. As an educator, she has been an adjunct professor at the New School and a dance instructor at New Jersey Performing Arts Center. Apologies. Rockefeller is also known for her choreography and direction. Her dance work, Beauty Meets Beast, explores the duality of women in street club dance, and her documentary, All the Ladies Say, which I show in my classes annually, highlights the lives and influential work of B-girls. An interdisciplinary artist, Rockefeller is also a model, a vocalist, and poet, and recently appeared in the film In the Heights. Welcome, Rock. Welcome to panelists. Thank you for being here. And I guess I should introduce myself. My name is Dr. Imani Kai Johnson, Associate Professor of Critical Dance Studies and Black Study at UC Riverside, and Scholar in Residence for the week. So, we have an hour to talk with them, and I would like to open with this kind of brief I want to focus our conversation on the historicization of hip hop dances that falls out of the kind of 50th anniversary narrative. Specifically, I'm thinking about the ways that each of you had made forays into and helped to innovate the ways that hip hop can live on different kind of cultural and institutional platforms, including television, stage, music videos, and longstanding institutions like The Pillow, all of which require different kinds of labor in translating these forms. And so I'm wondering, just to begin, would you mind introducing yourselves beyond the blurb and share a bit of your history as it dovetails with or departs from the history that's being lauded now in 2023? And whoever wants to start is welcome to start, whatever comes to mind.
I'll take a stab at it. And I don't mean to, I don't condone violence. But I'll take a stab at it. I think that when I first started to witness the dialogue in my family and in my neighborhood, I grew up in East Harlem and then we moved to the Bronx. It was a lot of exchange, social exchange, whether it was at a Sweet 16, a wedding, a birthday, any reason to party, because my family loved to celebrate Fridays and Saturdays. Our apartment would transform into the Copacabana. Furniture would disappear into I don't know whose bedroom, but the living room was lit. And so we had music. Musicians would just pop up, congas, guitar, what have you, and the exchange would happen generationally. So auntie would dance with her neighbors, and then the little ones, myself included, jump in to see what that was all about. And so I think that I always saw the social exchange. I also saw generational dialogue. It wasn't foreign to me. So when hip hop started to emerge and I saw circles, I have to say that first it was the guys that I witnessed, but I didn't feel like I wasn't allowed. I didn't feel like I couldn't go in there. But when it was a floor move exchange, I couldn't maneuver my body, so I had to wait and see and watch. And so there were boundaries and there was a respect for what was going on in there. And so I waited, and yet I desired to be that powerful, that aggressive, and that confident. I wanted to be what I saw there. And so in time, as the trend changed, then I could participate. Then I could, and I feel like it was like the Daisy Duke, the WAP, the Running Man, the Mary J. Blige moment, Fly Girls. Then, the Uptown Styles. Okay, now I can jump in, and I feel like I can also be a part of the conversation. When I started seeing music videos, then things were a little more choreographed. Things, whenever I went to audition, a lot of times I didn't make those auditions. But I knew I could dance, but I didn't make those auditions. And so there was already something happening that was outside of my knowledge. And I wasn't privy to directors, casting, producers. I just thought, hey, I can dance, put me in, pay me. That's what we all wanted. And so a lot of my peers who either were in there longer or knew somebody were getting in. And so I was seeing people in the music videos, and I was like, how do I get in? How do I get in? And so I feel like the freestyle, the circle, the improvisational part of hip-hop dance, it still isn't valued, or it isn't prominent. Most of the stuff that everybody sees is choreography behind an artist, which is beautiful. It helps the song. It helps the artist, for presentation. But in the underground, on the block, in the hood, at the parties, we are challenging each other to see what you got, what do I got compared to what you got, and we elevate each other. So I just want to put out there that freestyle is such an important part of what we do, and yet people haven't figured out how to just let it be, just trust, just, let the camera roll and let me do what we do, and we will have magic. You will see the magic. Just trust. So I just want to put that out there as the first.
Sorry, I'm still not sure about that.
You're not sure? You're not sure? Okay, well, maybe they can make you sure.
Theory don't know all the things. It's fine.
I think I'm going to just add on to and kind of build from where Rock started a base. I think, like she said, everything we have done within the culture started in family and in community. And I think we bringing that to these institutions into this stage, I think I want to push back. I'm trying to push back and have us not just be bodies moving for entertainment. And, and it's great. We're at, the Pillow, we're at these places, but we are people, we have families, we have emotion. And I feel like, just being able to bring all of that, like who you are as a person and all the things that we experience, good and bad, to the stage, and not just kind of take on all of these engagements for the sake of entertaining people, is one of the things that I think I want to change. I think that expectation. I think hip hop dance and concert dance spaces has a box, and we cannot get outside of that. They want to see you flip all day. That's the only thing that is applauded or response. And so I feel like the one thing that I think I want to see embraced, because we're already doing it. It's not that we're trying to do it. It has to be embraced in these spaces that you're new to us, because we're not new to this. We perform wherever, whether it's in our house, whether it's in our living room, on the street, wherever. I have a video of my son and his best friend when they were like 7 and 8, and we're in a store, and they had a whole the nene, the nene and the whip, a whole combination happening in the store while I'm shopping, and I just stood back and recorded it, and so what we do wherever whatever space we have, but as we move into these institutionalized spaces, we have to be able to bring ourselves. And so I'm asking for that space. I'm not asking for it, I'm taking that space.
Yeah.
I'm gonna move it to Stretch.
Yeah. And Stretch, as somebody who's made those forays into music videos, who kind of laid the groundwork for the kind of choreography that eventually becomes so commonplace. Yeah, what was that experience for you?
To put it bluntly, we brought the culture to the artist instead of trying to adapt the artist to the culture. We made them fit into the culture and understand it, and show and live through the culture for their work, not shaped it so it would work for them, but make them work for the culture. And I think that needs to be the focal point of everything that we do in hip hop culture. Bring the culture to the forefront, force feed the people who don't understand it. They'll get it because it's universal. And it's just like dance and music. Dance and music is numbers. Everyone understands numbers. Whatever language you speak, whatever culture you're in, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 is the same. The culture is based in that. Everybody can digest it. Everybody can understand it. You don't need someone to explain it. It's self-explanatory. All you have to do is close your eyes, open your heart, and feel what's in front of you.
So then walk us through that first experience of booking an audition and bringing that
I never booked an audition. I did the auditions. Yeah, the first time I went for an audition, it was for the Dance Theater of Harlem. And when we got there, it's like from the movie Breaking. We had our sweatsuits on and sneakers and hats, and we came in and everyone was in tutus and leotards, and they looked at us like we were crazy, and my dad was like, let's go. And he just snatched us up and said, this is not for you. You have to make your own way. And that was the focal point from there on in. It's like, okay, I don't fit into this box. I'll make my own, but it's not a box, it's a cipher. And it's if I split it in two and twist it, it's infinite. I'll draw everyone into that, and there's nowhere else for them to go. And that was the idea behind, the culture, going in and making the people choose us, making them understand and watch us, not asking, but just showing up and be like, you need this in your life and you know it. Let's go. The negotiation starts now. You want me to do this? You have to pay me. There's a value to what I do. That's the number one thing that my dad taught myself and my entire crew. If you do not value what you do, why would someone else? So we walked in and we were like, yeah, we can do whatever you ask as long as you sign on the dotted line and you pay this fee. And we're good. And it was always business first because my dad told us talent is only 10%. And you guys are ultra talented, but that was meaningless to him. He was like, I know 100 talented people. What makes you different?
Awesome. Thank you all. So a lot of people are experiencing these opportunities to attend hip hop events because of the attention around the 50th anniversary. And a lot of people are experiencing these things for the first time. But in that framework, what do you feel is missing from the way that gets historicized, whether that's from aspects of your personal history or dimensions of hip hop, like hip hop on stage, for example? What do we know of the historization of hip hop on stage or on television? So what do you feel is missing?
The dance. The dance. Everything that you hear about the 50th anniversary of hip hop is rap. And it's nice, but, before those rappers were famous, we were dancing. And we got those rappers famous because we danced to their music. And the DJs broke their music to the people before music videos in the clubs. And if we didn't dance, they didn't play that song. So, the dance is as big a part as the music. The dance is what explains the music to people who don't understand it. It's nonverbal communication, and that never gets mentioned. As Rock said, the freestyle part. They always bring up breaking, and I love it. I'm a b-boy. I started with breaking. But we've moved, it's grown. How about the rest of the time after the 80s? What about the late 80s and the 90s and the 2000s and the 2010s? And, like Michelle said, the whip and the nene. I know an entire generation of dancers that grew up with those two steps. They know nothing about the 80s. They don't know anything about MTV. They don't know anything about anything, music videos, but they know the whip and the nene. But that doesn't get mentioned in the 50th anniversary of hip hop.
And I'll just piggyback off of that as well. I think that if we are counting back to 1973, rap wasn't happening.
There was no rap yet.
It wasn't happening the way y'all know it. The party that flyer that says 1973, August 11th, there was DJing happening. Because Kool Herc clearly had to have known how to DJ in order to be DJing and promoting his flyer. So DJing was definitely happening. Dance was happening. Dance was happening. And so for rap to be the only thing that gets prominence this year is a lie. Because the first rap song, according to Sha Rock, did not happen until 1978. The first rap song recorded and on to the radio, 78. So if we're talking 73, there's something missing there. And as Stretch said, we need to be able to highlight and feature the history of the dance. And so before the 1984 movies, which we all know and love, Beat Street and Breaking, and even Wild Style, and even Style Wars, before that, dance is happening. There's a whole generation that predates the ones that ended up getting the Hollywood spotlight. And so there's so much, Imani, that we have to peel back and share with the world so that those people aren't forgotten. And as in your opening speech you had said, some of those innovators have passed. They've passed. And then some of the ones that are still around, they're a little resentful and they're a little hurt. And justifiably so, because they were just forgotten about. And only the people who showed up in the movies, they were the ones who got a lot of leverage from that those appearances. So there's a lot of history to be shared. And also to know that, as Stretch said, like everything kept moving. Things kept moving. And for us not to bring light to that, to not have those dance styles on stage, those innovators to come and be with us at these festivals. It's a job, it's a task. I I take it on. Quickstep and I try our best to feature and highlight a lot of the people that we saw, that we were inspired by, to our stages, to our discussions, to our workshops, so that a few of the new generation can say, oh yeah, I met Dancing Doug, or I met Sha Rock, or I met Grand Wizard Theodore, the inventor of the scratch. So just if each of us in our circles, which we are doing, are able to disseminate some of this information, then there's hope. There's hope. And so I always say, a toast to the next 50, because this first 50 has been amazing. It has been amazing, and we're in the positions that we are because of the tenacity that we all embody and the resilience, because I can tell you doors have been closed so many times on me. Quickstep and I trying to do theater, the theater world saying, no, because you don't have that PhD, so you don't know what the name of a light is. And I'm like, just tell me the name of the light and I'll memorize it. What is it? Boom, shins, what is it? Yeah, got you. And the next time I'll put it in the tech writer. I'm a quick study. What was it? Masters of Misuse? I'm going to use that, Sabelo. Yes. Anyway, I don't want to talk too much. So, yes.
I mean, I don't want to keep going on the same thing, but, just if you really think about it and break down, rap is the music, MC is the person, right? And MCs did what? Moved the crowd. So again, I think we just, in this 50-year anniversary, need to really dig deeper. And also in terms of rap music, what you see, what's being celebrated for the most part is just like surface level of what we do, right? There's some MCs that have been around since the very beginning, and it's a craft, it's a skill. Some of the most talented MCs around are, still doing it. And, I think some of them are definitely I saw Rock M do a show the other day and I was like, yes, it's so great to see that. But I think, folks just have to not take what's on the surface. And that's what is scary about what's being celebrated, is that, it's just like a bunch of famous people just giving each other props and not really giving the culture props. So.
And also, I like to point out and quote the great Mr. Wiggles, the culture started because the DJ was playing music for the dancers. That's how it started. There was no rap. Kool Herc was spinning the breaks and extending the break to keep the dancers dancing. What part of that is not the focal point of 50 years of hip hop? The dance should be at the focal point. It explains the music. And, most of your favorite rappers were dancers at one point. They got into the culture from the dance, not from the raps.
Mm-hmm. And so how has moving through different kinds of spaces and sites and institutions with hip hop shaped your life? Can you give us some insight into that experience, those experiences?
I would say I'm going to put that in the present tense and say, how is it shaping? Because I feel like for so long, and I'm just going to speak from my perspective, these two are New Yorkers, so the opportunities I think were different and access was different, being, from a very close and still dope city, Philadelphia. Hello. Things came in waves, right? So it's a little different in terms of, so I saw Stretch on videos and, before I even knew what this thing was and before I even knew him, and same for Rock. And then the next thing, I was going to clubs and then I would see these people in clubs, still not even making the connections that this was the person. And so for me, this as a career or as a thing that you do other than entertainment or fun or hanging out with your friends, there was no reality to that. Like I was forever kind of pushed in other directions, and I was pushing myself to grow up. And even people would say to me when I started my own, co-founded with Crystal Frazier, an all-female hip-hop company in the 90s in Philly, folks would say to me, you still do that hip-hop stuff? And so it didn't even matter if I was getting a job or working or whatever, so, I actively ran away from it, and then having a kid, it also put other demands on me, and so I think I talked myself out of it for a long time, but people like Stretch, and just the culture itself wouldn't let go. Like, opportunities kept opening up. When every time I thought I was done, I kept coming back in. And so I think now is a unique opportunity. I'm working with dancers of, very, like, I've known their parents before they were even thought of, and now they're adults and I'm working with them. And because of those long-term relationships and community, now I have opportunities to kind of like live through them and with them on stage. And so that's really dope. And so, like, that's why I'm saying it's affecting how I'm moving through space now. Because at one point, after working for a bunch of people and nonprofits and seeing how they want you as part of their organization so that they can put you in the grant because you are the authentic thing that they don't really know what it is. Yeah. And something happened during George Floyd where, one of the executive directors came to me and said, "Oh my God, it's been a week and we haven't made a comment. And we have, we use street dance." And I said, "Yeah, you just realized that? I knew that. I already made my statement. I've already said, I've already been outraged." And she said to me, "Well, how come you didn't write one?" And I said, "You're the executive director, not me. That's your job." Right. So what it gave me the courage to like push back. And I think, the more that I stay in this and embrace it as opposed to running away from it, the more I realize the power and value of what I can do. And so I don't know, where it's going to take me, but that was the last job where I worked for someone else. Now I work for myself and run my own organization. And since I made that commitment to myself, it has done nothing but soar. And so that's how it's changed how I move through space.
One, two. The funniest thing to me is this was never supposed to be what I wanted to do. I had no idea that I would be sitting here explaining about hip hop culture when I started. It wasn't something that was relatable as far as, a job or a living. And the funniest thing to me over the last, I say, decade or so is when I used to travel and I used to come through customs and I would tell them when I'm returning from somewhere, "Oh, and they, what do you do?" "Oh, I'm a choreographer, a teacher, I teach dance." "Oh, what kind of dance do you do?" "Oh, hip hop." They would look at me strange. But now when I go through customs and I say I teach hip hop, they're like, "Oh, wow, what kind of hip hop, and do you know this?" And I remember one time going through customs years ago, and they stopped me to go through my bags. I was coming back from Japan, I think. And they were like, "So you're a choreographer. What have you choreographed?" I said, "Okay, here, just watch this." And I pulled up my reel, and I showed them my reel. And they called all the customs agents in, and they're talking, and they're like, yo, I did Michael Jackson, and look, and Mariah Carey, and blah, blah, blah. And they're talking, and like 5 minutes goes by. I was like, "Guys, can I go now? Like, can I get my bag?" "Oh, yeah. They packed my stuff up and let me go." So it's really funny and comedic for me every time that I learn something new and that a new experience in the culture and people's the way that they see the culture, how they look at the culture now as opposed to before. Before it was, if I mentioned hip hop, it had to be rap. Now when I mention hip hop and I mention dance, they know what I'm talking about. And then when the conversation goes and they're like, "Oh, wow, you teach? How long have you been teaching?" I'm like, "I've been teaching a while." I'm like, "How long is a while?" "Well, how old are you?" "I'm 30. I started teaching 4 years before you were born." And they're like, and I'm like, "Yeah, I kind of know a thing about this."
I think, I've grown as a woman because of hip hop. There's no way, I really have to attribute my journey in hip hop from girlhood, teenhood to womanhood is because of hip hop. I gained a lot of confidence just jumping into a circle. I also had to learn how to set my boundaries. And so the B-Girl book that's out, that Martha Cooper, a famous photographer, put out, I wrote a little forward to it, and I had I testified that I was in a circle once and having a great time in a club, and some guy had to grab me, and he was starting to hump me, and we, like reenacting like a sex act. And I decided at that point, no one's ever going to do that to me again. And while he had my legs wrapped around his waist, I just flipped back into like a back walkover, basically, released my legs, went through his legs, and then kicked him out the circle. And it was one of the first times that I felt like, yes, this is my space. Don't come into my space unless I invite you. Like I say, like if I like you, then okay, we talk over here. We talk over here on the side. But don't put me out there in front of the public as something that is, that can be crushed. It helped me to grow in that respect. But also, once I danced on the street, that also gave me thick skin, because New Yorkers are, New Yorkers will throw a quarter, New Yorkers will hurl some really weird, epithets at you, whatever. The crew I was dancing with that is having an anniversary this weekend, the Breeze team, hard to get along with as a girl. I mean, props off, hats off to them, but so hip hop, each step of the way taught me how to become more resilient. And when I met this gentleman, and he brought Quickstep, who's my husband of like 28 years, brought me to, it's been a little bit of a while. He brought me to his teachers, and he took me to Europe, one of my first trips to Europe. And those breakers were saying, hey, Hollywood thinks that, it can tell you when and where and how to do your thing. And we were like, nah, no way. We're going to continue to do it. We're going to learn something called self-producing. We're going to do our own events. We're going to bring graffiti writers and the MCs that we know on the underground. We're going to bring the poppers. At that point, it wasn't so much about contests and trophies and prizes the way it is now, but it was a resilient, a defiant aspect that really taught me a lot. Because even after that, when I would go to other countries, maybe I didn't have money to stay at a hotel. But breakers would be like, you could stay in my living room, or I have a couch. Like, the dance network is unbelievably efficient. And yet everyone's poor. Everyone is poor. And so with each step of the way that I was being, allowed to spread my wings and be somebody, hip-hop was there saying, well, what else you got? And, oh, you got to come with something else, because we saw that. That's on video now. Now, what else you got? What other moves you got? Oh, there's more girls now. It's not just you. What you got? And now my gray hairs, what you got? What can you do? And so I think hip hop has helped me to grow into the woman that I am today, and that self-producing is an aspect that was right there in the beginning of hip hop, with the flyer that you see that is being passed around, and with the hats that had the rhinestones and the graffiti with your name on the shirt. Self-promotion, self-producing. You gain this because no one is doing it. There was no record label back in the day, so you had to promote. I mean, I think 50 Cent, right, was selling cassettes out of his trunk.
Even before him, Eazy-E,
There you go.
Ice-T,
There you go. Right, yeah.
Master P.
Self-producing is a strong part of hip-hop, and it's a way that we adjust. We keep adjusting.
Thank you for that. Heads up, I'm going to be soliciting audience questions. While you're forming that thought, I'm just going to invite our panelists to, and as an ethnographer, I have to, tell me a story about a moment, a deciding moment, either that made hip hop palpable for you as a career choice, or that you decided or you realized this was going to continue on. You all seem to have moments where it was not necessarily a certainty at a certain point. So when does it become that? Tell us a story.
When does it become a certainty?
Is there a moment, or is there a particular moment that marks a shift for you?
Oh, for me, it's my very first gig where I actually got paid. I got paid recurringly. I got hired to dance in a nightclub called Union Square, that I used to pay for to get in every week. And when they told me they wanted me to dance, and the guys, they hired my friends, and my friends, I didn't go the night that they decided to hire the dancers. And my friends called me and they were like, come to the club on Monday. And I'm like, the club's not open on Monday. Why would I go to the club on Monday? I said, just show up at the club on Monday. I get to the club and like, they want to pay us to perform. And I'm like, pay us to perform where? On the stage? I'm like, yeah. And they called and they came and they were like, yeah, they said they needed you. You're the choreographer. And I'm like, oh, I am? Okay. And we're going to pay you guys each week to perform. You're going to open up for every act, and you get free drinks, you get a guest list, and you get paid. And I'm like, wait, stop. You're going to pay me to come in this club to dance that I used to pay you for. Now you're going to pay me. I get in free. I get free drinks, and I got a guest list? Really? And they're like, yes, really. They said you are the most important. You got to put the show together. I'm like, okay. And from that point on, it was like, I can make a living from this. I'm getting paid from this. Like, wow. And then, of course, I went home, I told my dad, and he yelled at me, and he was like, what are you doing? Why are you're taking this lightly? Like, this is what you want to do it all out, or don't do it at all. If you want this to actually work, you got to put in the work. You can't go to the club now and just dance like you danced before. You got to dance to the next level. And he was adamant about that. He was like, if you, really want to do this, either go hard or go home. And that was the point for me, like, okay. And, the very next Friday, I had our first show. And from that point on, I've been doing this ever since.
I want to say, I think for me, it was seeing people like Rock and Quick and Buddha Stretch. And I had this moment, so I started my company right after I got out of undergrad, because I did get one of those, local R&B acts. I got a video, right? So we did this video in Philly. I don't know, it was like 20 degrees outside. We had no clothes on. It was freezing. We were there for hours, just with our coats on, freezing, and the artist is doing his thing. So whatever, we got $50 or something, I don't know. But that wasn't the moment, because I started the company after that, but I was still working a full-time job. And then, we were doing shows and things. And then at the Painted Bride in Philly, Full Circle came. And I remember being pregnant. I was 8 or 9 months pregnant. And I was just blown away by this show. And I was sitting there oh, you can really, really do this thing. You can, this is a full evening length work. I'm I was so inspired. I think Stretch was in that show. Tweet Boogie. Clown, everybody is just, I talk to them about this all the time, because it was one of those moments I think it had kind of switched for me, and kind of just gave me ideas of where I wanted to go. But then it's also at that time, videotapes started floating around of Stretch and Tweety in Japan and Marge in Japan and everybody. And then I got a videotape of one of the dopest shows I've ever seen in my life, called Ghetto Originals, or Jam on the Groove, which is by the company Ghetto Originals, which Quick was in, Rock was in at some point too. Quick was one of the founding members, and I then understand the depth of it, right? And then met Stretch, Elite Force, Tweety, it just, at that moment, I knew it was going to be around forever. And Philly had its own crew, but it was local for me, you know what I mean? So it was just realizing through all of that those things that kind of came into my space at the same time, how global it was, because I didn't know. Because you don't know. I didn't know that they were teaching all around the world. That blew my mind, Yeah. And the same thing, that this show existed in the 90s. That was because I think the footage I saw was in Europe somewhere. It wasn't even here, because it was different language to transcribe the interviews and stuff. Yeah, it's mad bootleg. But just watching that show made me understand that, oh, this is global. And we took it there, And so, when you see these students, 500 Japanese students locking and popping and dancing freestyle, boom, boom, boom. Like we did that. You know what I mean? So I think that for me was like the change.
Pre-YouTube.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no YouTube. No social
TikTok,
media.
No social media.
VHS tapes, you know?
Yeah, and for those who don't know, Jam on the Groove is the first off-Broadway hip-hop dance theater piece. So predates
That one of Bessie.
Rennie's work, predates a lot of work and kind of lays some groundwork.
They totally did. Yep. Props to you all.
The foundation.
Yeah, this fall I think you'll be at City Center remounting, I think, 2 of the pieces from Jam on the Groove. So keep your ears
3.
to the ground, the finger on the pulse. You might get to see something that really inspired a lot of people. And even to this day, when people tell me, "Oh, cause have you seen Hamilton? It's the first hip hop play." I'm like, I'm like, do you have 30 minutes? Can I sit with you for 30 minutes? Because we've got some work to do. We got some history.
Give them 5. I got it on YouTube. Like, here, you need to watch this.
5 minutes. Crash course. I've had many moments where I wanted to quit. I've had many moments where I felt ugly, where I felt like this is not for me. Let me go work for a bank. I had an uncle who managed a bank, and my mother was always like, "Vete pa'l banco." And I'd be like, "No, I will dance on the subway if I have to. I'm not going into the corporate world." But there were many times, so many times. But then there were also like moments like when I went to Japan. And, my hair's curly. I had to press it so it could fit under the headspin hat and put the headspin hat quickly for this dance piece, but my hair is curly. And so I went to Japan, and there were these Japanese women who I know have beautiful pin straight hair, but they had the curly hair, or they had the locks. And I was like, what? And they were like, hey, how do you do it? And I was like, no, it just grows.
Right.
I don't do it. Grandpa was black. So that trip, right? That trip was I came back taller from that trip. So that's one of them. That's one, because they were like, what are you wearing? What do you eat? Like, where do you shop? I'm like rainbows, like, there's no brand name, nothing. It's all like right on the app. So many moments of affirmation. I think there were times when I would cry when I wouldn't make auditions. And Shake, rest in peace, light skin Shake. He caught me one time crying, and he was like, "What's the matter? What are you crying?" And I was like, "Why? Why doesn't the industry like me? Why am I not it?" And he was like, "Sister, please. Those dancers can't go where you're going. Please stop crying. When you decide to rise, they all gonna want to follow you. They're all gonna jump where you're jumping." And it did lift me up, and I want to say that one of the last things was I was in that Hollaback Youngin video by Fabulous. And there's a bunch of video vixens, and they're all in the place getting their hair and makeup done. And, I got my ponytail, my mock neck, which is like almost a turtleneck. Because this is what we wear. We have to spin, okay? So there's no reason to have a push-up bra or, it's like, how do I cover myself? And I appear in that video breaking. There's a linoleum, the fellas are breaking, and I'm in it, and there's like 2 beautiful frames of me doing my munch mills and one just doing one arm freeze, holding my crotch to the world like, yeah, I'm here. And so that video to me is affirmation. Rock, you gotta keep going. Rockefeller, you have to keep going, because there will be moments. Just wait for those moments.
Ashe. No, I just was gonna say ashe to that. It's funny because for me, it's every time I think that I've done something and okay, this is it, something else always came up. When I decided, a lot of my peers told me I was crazy when I decided to stop doing music videos and stuff, and they were like, why with your resume you could do this and that. I was like, nah, I'm gonna do theater with Rock and Quick. I'm gonna be with Full Circle, and I don't want to do music videos. I'm not going to LA. I don't care about all that. And they told me I was crazy, and they were like, yeah, you could be doing this and that. And I was like, I'm doing theater. I'm gonna go back to teaching. And then a couple of years passed by, and I see all these people that were making music videos and was so hyped. Now they're like, how do you get to travel and teach like that? And wow, I saw you guys on Broadway. How did you do that? I'm like, Google it.
anyone have a question they want to ask our illustrious panelist? Yes. How does the dance look different when it's not choreographed for a performance? Like, so how does that freestyle?
It's more intense. It's way more intense. The three of us can be doing something in synchronicity, and it's great. But the minute we point to Stretch and he goes out, he's bringing an intensity that has not been rehearsed, and it's not expected. It's coming from somewhere else. Boom. It hits him through the music, and then it hits y'all. It's this serious ripple effect. And I know that theaters and cameras probably don't understand, and they want to know. Already, right? We have something at Lincoln Center next Wednesday, and they're like, how long for each dancer within the, battle? And we're like, no. I cannot give you the time. The dancers have to improvise, and when they're ready, boom, the judges will say, this one won or that one. And so I know that it's hard to fathom something just being so unscripted and loose, but it's so powerful. It's so much more powerful.
Hello? Oh, just to add to that, again, this idea of how things live in community, we understand how we're supposed to respond in that call and response. So instead of people sitting and looking at us very nicely, and we're like, yeah, like we're like, basically like just giving our whole lives on the stage and not getting any response, I think, you're taught to be quiet when you want in the theater. All the things are off, no video. Like, first of all, get your cameras out, because you might see something tonight that you're not going to see tomorrow, right? And so
Never going to see it again.
The ideal of like freestyle and interpreting music in real time, you could be the dopest person. Like, we know she's the best dancer in this room, but guess what? Somebody just roasted her because they were tapped in on a different level. And so, I know that, a lot of presenters don't love to see like the freestyle. They want you to see this like perfection. Anybody could eventually at some point, everyone sitting right here could learn every step they saw up there today. I know you don't think so, but you can. And so I think what's unique about being able to do freestyle is that, we get to be like tuned in a way that requires more than just like, okay, right foot, left foot, turn, okay, back, up. And it allows you to bring your personality and what you're feeling that day. I had a shitty day at work. So now that is what that freestyle is going to look like. I had a great day. We're going to praise the Lord today, So it's, and I think we do that anyway, whether we're given the space or not. You know what I mean? I think a lot of the work that, for sure, that I want to make sure that is present in what we're presenting as Lazy Hip Hop. I think that's our job. And if y'all don't respond to us, we respond to each other. We talk to each other. Right? I talk on stage, talk to each other, give each other, support each other on stage. And so I think you'll see that in certain shows, and then there's shows that we're trying, like, I've been guilty of it, trying to change my work to fit in what I think the audience might want or the presenter might expect. But now I'm not doing that anymore. It's all new. So come back for the next show.
Yeah. To quote the great Tyrone Proctor, when you're doing freestyle improvisation, you become a three-dimensional image of sound. You're watching the sound. You're not hearing it anymore. You're watching it. That's what the freestyle is for. The improvisation is you watching the music. It's a spiritual connection that you can't get through here. It has to come through the entire senses right here. And the improvisation is what grabs you, holds you, and takes you and makes you appreciate the choreography.
Yeah. I love that. Yeah. And I think the anxiety of producing that in institutional spaces is wrapped up in the fact that you can't guarantee how a thing is going to play out. And they want guarantees. Yeah. Other questions? Okay, so who's doing something new, innovative that you would pay to see? Who's doing something exciting that you're checking for?
All of them. All of the companies that I saw today, I would pay to go see. If Sabella's coming with Ladies of Hip Hop to New York City, what's the calendar? Where's the Eventbrite? I gotta go see it. I have to go see it. I trust that I will be fed I will be fed, especially as someone who is looking to find others that are out there, sort of thinking in the same vein as me. I want to see what's happening. And I've been watching for years. That's why, like, this moment, to even see some of the younger dancers that we've seen on the come up, part of this program. And even with Rennie Harris, some of those dancers, we've seen them when they were like younger. It's amazing that now they're on stage with us, sharing the same like frequency. Like we're sending a message out to the audiences of Jacob's Pillow together in such different ways. And so I learned, I've been fed, and I would pay to see this program.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's already in existence. I'm a firm believer that nothing is new. It's all in how you interpret it, music, dance, all of that. But I do think what I'm looking to do and what inspires me is collaboration. So I think, as artists, we're taught to go in and make a thing, and you have your dancers and you do the thing. And it becomes a very isolating space. And what was great about being able to be part of this was to be able to work with Sabela and Mina. And this is so far out of the realm that anything that we've ever done. And so, but it just has opened up so much for me already. So I'm inspired more by other people, collaborating with other people, inviting them into my space. It requires you to be vulnerable to a certain extent, because you have to get out of the comfort zone of what you're used to doing. Because once you know your thing, you can continue to do that same thing over and over again. It's the formula. You're going to get hired. You're going to get booked. It's the people who are working outside of that and looking for other ways to create. And to me, that's what keeps me interested, because it's been a minute. Been in it for a while.
I'm willing to pay for anything that's going to help me grow and learn. And so, when I see something like I saw today with Ladies of Hip Hop, that's an investment.
So what do you see as hip hop's role in the Me Too movement, especially as a fairly male-dominated space, and how has that changed over time?
In the beginning, I didn't sense that there was something wrong, because I was allowed to just jump in. So to me, there was nothing wrong. It's as I continued and I got older, and the lipstick and the bra, and we need a catwalk, and bring your heels to the audition, make love to the camera, was told to me in an audition once, which I couldn't. I just can't. I don't, this is between me and you only. That's it. Nobody else gets to see. So I was brought up in this type of idea, that I'm special. This is all special. I think that when you look at the mainstream, it's a stark contrast to what's happening in community. And so I had the choice to either transform and fit to what the camera and mainstream is asking of dancers, women, rappers, or do this other against the grain life. And going against the grain means that you don't get hired. And people have labeled me troublesome, have said she's hard to work with, because I'm gonna put you to task and say, well, why did you have that model of a B-girl, which I had to tell Red Bull once, in heels? She's a B-girl, she's wearing heels in your brochure. Like, what? We don't wear heels. We're the anti-heel female dancer, if anything. So why? But that didn't go over well, because why was Rockefeller criticizing again? Why is Rockefeller always criticizing? I'll give you props when you deserve them, but I gotta tell you, when you're violating, you're representing my life, what I stand for, the women around the world who put their heads on the floor. And rappers in general, like female rappers were like somebody's little sister. Like, no, we're not putting you out there like that. You're part of our clique, we protect you, you're part of us. But things changed because capitalism was like, well, sex sells, so come on, let's go. Can you pop a titty? Come on, do something. And so I think that on the underground and in the community, there is space for someone like me and us to design our universe. In my universe, there is no disrespecting women, there is no violating, there is no making the men always be criminal and toxic. We don't do that. We don't play toxic rap lyrics. I'll play the instrumental in my dance classes. So I have a hard line, but I'm also creating this. I have the freedom to create this universe that I'm in. And you have a choice to step in and be here with me, or you can go do whatever else you want to do. So I think the Me Too movement is tough, because I think that if we were to bring that into hip hop, a lot of people would not be able to continue in hip hop because the streets informs hip hop, and the streets is not a forgiving place for women. I can tell you. I dance on the street. And so I think that what we do person to person, peer to peer, when we have interventions, when we do speak to people like watch out for so-and-so, or you know what, now so-and-so cannot come into this breaking event ever until an apology and some resolution or therapy has, restitution has been done, some restoration. It's there and it's beautiful. It's just you don't get to see it because y'all are only seeing the mainstream. And so, but this should maybe help you to connect more to the underground, to people like us, so that you are aware of the progressive nature of hip hop. It's always been forward thinking, it's always been community, but capitalism and the mainstream and the camera is gonna want one thing. And you have to know to discern between the two, commercial, community.
Thank you for that. Thank you all for coming. Thank our illustrious panelists for participating.